Hello and welcome to the European Football Show's Europa League Round of 16 preview with Breaking the Lines. In the build-up to the upcoming game week, we are dissecting each fixture with an assortment of guests from around the world. In today's clip, we look at a tie involving arguably the Europa League favourites in the shape of FC Barcelona against Turkish giants Galatasaray SK. Joining me to discuss Barcelona's chances in this tie is Matthew Clark, producer of social media and podcast contributions for La Liga Lowdown at La Liga Lowdown. Matt, huge thank you for your time this evening. We at BTL really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
So FC Barcelona, 6th of November 2021 will go down as a very significant date in the 2021-22 season for the Catalan Giants. On this date, Blaugrana, after being 3-0 up on match day 13 in La Liga against Celta de Vigo, blew a 3-goal lead to draw 3-3 against the Galician outfit. At this point, Barca were under the caretaker management of Sergei Barjuan and sat a staggering 9th in Spain's top flight. 2 days later, legendary former midfielder Xavi Hernandez was appointed as Barcelona boss. And what a transformation has occurred since. Barca have only lost one La Liga match in 13 and have jumped up to 4th in La Liga with 17 points, one out of a maximum 21 in 2022 so far. So, Matt, just how has Xavi transformed Barcelona in recent weeks?
Well, I mean, you've outlined it perfectly there. I mean, it was an incredible transformation from where they were. It was looking like a complete season of transition at best and absolute, catastrophe to, as some were describing it. Knocked out of the Champions League, of course, in the group stage, which is pretty unprecedented for them, talking 20 years since this happened before. And yeah, Xavi, a lot of pressure on him. There was a lot of fanfare around his arrival. So the expectations were quite high. There was kind of a cautious optimism that it would take some time, and that was kind of true because the first few games it wasn't quite working too well. I think they only won 2 of the first 7 under Xavi, and there was that defeat to Betis, a couple of draws as well. But you could see that on the pitch the signs were slowly getting better. Players were improving, and the system was looking better as a whole. There was more of an idea about the way they were going to play. And as you said, 2022 has been really positive for Barca so far. You look at the transfer window, the arrivals they brought in, it's almost a completely different front line in the shape of Ferran Torres, Aubameyang, Adama Traoré, and of course, Dani Alves at right back. He's not available for the Europa League, which we might come on to later. But yeah, in general, a really good transfer window, and that's been backed up by a fabulous February. They've scored 19 goals in the games in the calendar month, which is a very healthy average of over 3 a game. And they've scored 4 goals in back-to-back matches now, 3 consecutive matches even. And the last time that happened was 2017, and they had Messi, Suarez, and Neymar up front then. So it just gives you an indication of how well they've been doing of late. And I think they'll be quite confident going into this game. They've just beaten Napoli in the last round, really convincing over the 2 legs. It was only 1-1 at Camp Nou, but Barca were the better team, had a really high XG, just couldn't finish the chances. Ferran Torres in particular, you remember, he was seen crying at the end of the game because he was unable to take a few of his chances. And in the second leg, I mean, Barca were just lethal on the counter. Napoli gave them far too much space, and it was exploited perfectly by the likes of Adama, Aubameyang, and Frenkie de Jong. Even Jordi Alba getting forward to score the goal. So yeah, really convincing win in the last round. And I think, given the obviously we'll hear from our expert on Galatasaray, a lot more knowledgeable than me, but given their state in the table, it could be quite a good tie for Barca.
It's a remarkable turn of events at FC Barcelona. I mean, the performances, I have to admit, they looked a little bit scratchy early doors when Xavi first came in. But wow, things have really, really turned for the better recently. I watched the first half of that 4-2 home win against Atletico de Madrid and, the whole of the 4-0 home victory against Athletic Club de Bilbao. And that's perfect examples of the transformation, that despite the much, they've just been transformed in recent weeks. They're in red hot form, and yeah, they're looking like they're going to climb up the table. Title's probably a bit of a stretch, but yes, maybe even second place, depending on if Sevilla crumble at the end of the season. Second place might even yet be on for Barcelona. It's definitely a distinct possibility. So, Matt, despite the much publicised challenging financial circumstances of Barca of late, you touched on this very briefly when you were speaking. Barcelona are actually one of the busiest clubs in the January transfer window, bringing in 4 new signings. Veteran right fullback Dani Alves has returned for a second spell at the club, in addition to winger Adama Traoré from Wolverhampton Wanderers, attacker Ferran Torres from Manchester City, and striker Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang from Arsenal. So, Matt, which of these 4 signings do you think has been the best for Barca so far in the games you've watched? And actually, how would you assess all 4 of them? How have they performed so far, each of them at Camp Nou?
It's a very good question. I think all 4 have been very positive. I think the big fanfare was about Ferran Torres, the biggest money move from Manchester City, coming back to Spain after his time with Valencia. And I think if anything, he maybe quite hasn't really set the world alight yet, but I think everyone's seen that the talent is there, the right movements are there in the box. He is a finisher, although he hasn't shown it yet. He knows where the goal is. He scored a hat-trick in the Premier League for City at the start of this season alone. So he can score goals, and I'm sure he will score goals as he grows in confidence. Adama, incredible again. We all talk about his pace and power, but his decision making has improved a bit as well from since he's arrived at Barca. You look, he's already had 4 assists in about 6 or 7 appearances, and that's pretty impressive given that I think he only had 4 assists in his last like 90 odd games for Wolves. So he's clearly feeling better to be back home, back where he's loved, where he's familiar. And I think, you know, sometimes players just need a move just for any kind of reason, whether it's just surroundings, form. It can be a range of different things. You know, we're all human. Footballers are too. And the same is true of Aubameyang. I mean, clearly at Arsenal, things have broken down with Arteta. We don't quite know the full behind the scenes stories there, but it's pretty clear there was a full breakdown and his time at Arsenal was up. But since he's been to Barca, he's been a revelation. I mean, he scored 5 goals in his last 3 matches, a hat-trick against Valencia away, and then a goal in Naples last week in the previous tie. And he got another one against Athletic to open the scoring last Sunday. So he's banging in the goals. And yeah, we all know Aubameyang, he's a fantastic striker. He knows where the goal is, fox in the box, poacher, you know, all the kind of classic forward cliches you want to say. He does really fit that bill. And yeah, given that Barca are now playing with more confidence, he will get more chances. And yeah, you'd back him to finish most of them. But just to touch on the final one, probably to answer your question, I would actually say that maybe Dani Alves' signing has perhaps been the most important, purely in terms of the experience and mentality that he's brought. I mean, he's won it all in football. We all know how many titles he's won and represented some of the biggest clubs in the world. Brazil, of course, recent Olympic champion as well, at the age of 35, 36. And I think just him coming back, of course, this was already announced before January. It obviously took until January before they could register him, but everyone knew he was coming. And it just kind of gave everyone that kind of thing to look to, say, okay, it's okay. Dani Alves is coming back. Xavi's here now. And he's going to bring that real kind of experience and authority to a back line, which was really struggling, to be honest. I mean, okay, Piqué's there, but it was really leaking goals. And even Ter Stegen hasn't quite looked at his best this season. But to have Dani Alves there, I mean, you mentioned that game against Atleti. Dani Alves was the best player on the pitch in that game. He was incredible. From right back, he was sort of drifting infield into central midfield, and he was just dictating everything. And Atleti didn't know how to defend against him. So yeah, he was just a total performance from him, using all his guile and skill. And I think for Barca, that is so important to have these leaders, because we know they've got a lot of young players around, the likes of Pedri, Gavi, Nico, Eric Garcia at the back. You know, they need some leaders, and of course they've got Busquets and they've got Piqué, but I think Dani Alves there as well. He's a obviously hugely respected figure in world football, and I think him being there just settles everyone down and says, okay, it's not so bad now. We can build from this, and yeah, I think he's been integral to that.
Yeah, it's incredible. I really honestly thought that, it's staggering to think he's going to be playing in a World Cup. Like, I think he's still getting Brazil call-ups, isn't he, Alves? It's incredible. I really honestly thought after the 2018 World Cup, that was it. His career would slowly start winding down. He'd gone back to Brazil for a little while. But yeah, just come back to Barcelona, still playing regularly on. And yeah, could go to another World Cup. It's staggering, this revitalisation of Alves. I saw he signed a new contract, hasn't he, to 2023 now at the club. So obviously they want to continue the relationship for another year. And Adama Traore, yeah, I mean, I knew the raw ingredients with Traore were there. I mean, I watched part of the Athletic Club game. I watched the Atletico game. Yeah, I knew the raw ingredients were always there with Traore, but that first half against Atleti, when he literally had Mario Hermoso on toast. He didn't know what to do with him at all. He was just all over the place, Mario Hermoso. Traore just totally dominated him. Yeah, the signings have really, really boosted Barcelona's season. And yeah, Torres as well. I'm sure he'll come good. And Aubameyang, we all know he's a very good player. Like you said, it was just a breakdown in communications with Arteta, but we all know that he can give them a few more years at the top level. So yeah, absolutely. It's Xavi is. It's almost like he. I watched some of the games at the start, and he slowly started to feed in. He had a look at all options. He looked at some B team players, and then he's filtered out the ones that he doesn't want and brought back in, and now identified where he needed to upgrade the squad, gone and done it. And yeah, very, very professional stuff. Yeah, I have to say credit to Xavi so far. So yeah, great insight there from Matt. So on to Barca's round of 16 tie against Galatasaray. This looks to be on paper an excellent draw for the Catalan side, and it gives them a great chance to make the quarterfinals of the Europa League. Matt, much of what Xavi has done so far at Barcelona has been very good after a slow start. However, are there any signs of weakness that have yet to be ironed out? I think you briefly mentioned it when you were speaking just last. Where might Galatasaray be able to hurt Barca and send the Europa League favourites crashing out to the competition in what will be considered quite a big upset?
Yeah, I think with Barca, there is still defensive frailty there. And of course, we've been eulogising about Dani Alves, but of course, he hasn't been registered in the Europa League squad because they could only register 3, and they chose to register those 3 attackers that we've been speaking about. So yeah, Dani Alves is a big miss. In the first leg against Napoli, they started Oscar Mingueza at right back, and it's safe to say he was the weak link in that game. And then, to be fair, they then went with Serginho Dest, as they have done in recent games, because Dani Alves has been suspended in La Liga too. So, but Dest has actually improved quite a lot as well. Again, we talk about this environment just being more cohesive to the collective as well as individuals. Dest is one that was kind of written off as well, but he's had a couple of good performances. So, notwithstanding that, though, I think, there is still some issues at the back. Ter Stegen we've touched on. He doesn't quite look the same keeper that he was. Couple of individual errors leading to goals, and just general kind of unease about his kind of just general play, really, just whether it's positioning or not diving for things, or just that momentum isn't quite with him. And I think if Galatasaray do get a chance, I'm sure they'll create something for sure. If they can take that chance, then they'll be well in the tie. We obviously know about the away goals not being a factor anymore, so going to Istanbul is going to be a very vociferous atmosphere. We all know that. Of course, the first leg is in Barcelona, so if Barca can come away with a big lead, that should be enough for them. But as I say, if Galatasaray can nick one on the break at Camp Nou, perhaps on those transitions where perhaps they're not quite as well oiled as Xavi would like, I think that could be one area of weakness for them to exploit.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, just the second leg. I mean, it's weird because Galatasaray obviously won the Europa League group. The second leg is in all the teams that won the Europa League group. The second leg is at their home stadium. So yeah, Barcelona, got to try and take a good lead to Galatasaray. Absolutely. So yeah, great stuff from Matt there. And finally, one last thing to ask, Matt. Could you give us a prediction for this tie? You can give either an aggregate score over the 2 legs, or just which of the 2 sides you think will progress. Or if you're feeling really bold, give both.
Well, this is where it's the difficult one, isn't it? I have to say, I think Barca are definitely favourites to qualify. I think, as you touched on there, they're probably the tournament favourites, let alone for this tie. So I don't really see, especially the form Galatasaray are in, and the position in the table, is they've been going through some problems, obviously, recently. So I have to favour Barca for this tie. I reckon they will get a lead from the first leg to take. I reckon maybe 3-1 at Camp Nou is quite possible, because they've been creating so many chances, and they've got loads of different goal scorers as well, contribution from all over the pitch. They've had 20 different goal scorers in La Liga alone, which is an incredible number. So yeah, even Dembele's kind of come to life a little bit recently. So if he's there, he'll be a danger too, as well as the ones we've already mentioned. So yeah, I'll go with 3-1 at home, and then I reckon maybe a draw away, maybe a 1-1 away from home, which will never be in too much jeopardy, but Galatasaray will certainly give it a good go, I'm sure.
So that was Matt Clark, who analysed Barca going into this big game. And now, what about the other team involved in the shape of Galatasaray SK? The Istanbul Giants, perhaps surprisingly according to many, ended up winning the Europa League group and therefore got a bye to the round of 16. Joining me to assess their chances is Jakup Marufoglu of Football Ala Turca, an account dedicated to all things Turkish football, and he's a big Trabzon supporter. Jakup, brilliant to have you on our Europa League special, and thank you for coming on and joining us. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
So Galatasaray then, it's not your team, but Galatasaray then, is it fair to say that this season has really been, a tale of 2 different competitions for Gala, 2 different faces, if you could say? In the Europa League, they've had the good face, they've won 3, and they won 3 and drew the other 3 of their 6 group matches to top a group, including Lazio and Marseille, with ease, really. However, in the Turkish Super League, Gala has shown their bad face. They currently sit in a staggering 12th place in the standings, only 7 points above the relegation zone, something which it would have been absolutely unthinkable, perhaps, at the start of the season. So Jakob, explain Gala's mixed season so far.
Well, as you said, it has been a really mixed season, and it has a couple of reasons for it. I think that the reason why Galatasaray has been doing pretty well in Europe is, first of all, that European football is always very different to the football that's played in Turkey, especially against a team like Galatasaray, where all the teams try to lock up, park the bus, because they really have a lot of individual talents that can change the game for them in their favor. So what happens is that it really turns into a game of cat and mouse, where one team tries to get past that little spot that they have, so they can maybe force a goal. Uh, but in Europe, where every team knows that they are good, that they are quality because they reach the group stages, or they reach the qualifying stages or the knockout stages, they know that attacking is maybe a better strategy. So the play is much more open in Europe, which which is in favor of Galatasaray, because they have a lot of talented players in the likes of Kerem Aktürkoğlu. Figuli is pretty good depending on his day. Um, Mustafa Mohamed, Halil Dervişoğlu, all names that are pretty good. They got a lot of new players this year in Kikaldao and I'm forgetting his name, Morutan. So they have a lot of individual qualities that are really good to change the course of a game. And when they get the space, they really flourish in their abilities. That's one of the reasons why when they played in Europe, they were really much more fluent, and they were much more um, organized in football, because they had the space to make use of those talents. And in Turkey, they don't. In Turkey, they get beat up because they are the bigger team. The tackles will be rougher, the man marking will be much more closer, and that is what led to their that is in part what led to how low they are standing. It's also a reason because um, the other teams have been better in certain aspects. I think the Super League in quality has leveled more than it usually does. Normally, you have a couple of outliers that are just way too good, and the rest, fights amongst themselves. But this year, outside of the big four teams that traditionally are the strongest in the league, there are a lot of teams that have made good transfers, made signed good managers, and made right decisions. So the playing field is much more equal at the moment in Turkey, in the league itself. So that leads to the weird situation that you have at the moment.
I watched a few of Gala's games in the Europa League this season, and when I saw them play in Europe without having looked at the Turkish Super League when I watched those games, I thought to myself, "Oh, I'll go and have a little look and see where they're currently sitting domestic, because they've looked quite good in these games that I've watched." And then cue my shock when I saw them in the bottom half of the table. I mean, it really is just staggering. However, one could say that Gala are not the only big team struggling in Turkish football currently. Only one of the top five teams in the current Super League standings are filled by one of Istanbul's traditional big three clubs. Gala, Fenerbahce, and Besiktas. And that's obviously Fener in fourth place. Besiktas currently sixth, and Trabzonspor, your team, Jakup, I'm sure you're absolutely delighted, are currently sit way clear at the top and will win their first Turkish Super League title since the mid-1980s. So, Jakup, what do you think has been the reasons for this extraordinary season in Turkish football? I think you probably just touched on it briefly there. Have the smaller known teams such as Konyaspor improved considerably, or has it been also mismanagement and poor performance by the big guns, which has led to this leveling of the playing field in Turkish football?
As I said, I think it's a combination of the factors. If you look at the top teams, Başakşehir, currently managed by Emre Belözoğlu, has been beating down the door for years now. They had the current coach of Trabzonspor, Abdullah Avcı, there for a long time, and they have been building such a great team with good transfers. They are a government backed team financially, but that's the reason why they are hated. But outside of that, all the footballing decisions they have made have been smart decisions, and that has been the same for a couple other teams. Adana Demirspor has brought in big name players like Balotelli and Belhanda, but they also brought in Montella as a manager. So they might, sorry, they may make some odd decisions. Getting some older players that are risky because of their personalities, but complemented by getting a decent head coach that can manage them. And their place in the standings says enough. But if you look at the Istanbul teams, I think all of them have issues of their own. And because they all have their issues on their own is also a reason why the other teams, the smaller teams, so to say, the Anatolia teams, have been able to get past them for this season. If you look, for example, at Beşiktaş has brought in a lot of big name players like Batshuayi. They brought in Pjanic, and they a lot of fans expected those players to be the same as they are in their respective teams. They expected a Pjanic that was as good as he was at Juventus, and then at Barca he had a little less playing time, but they still expected him because the Turkish league is one of a lesser quality compared to the Serie A and the La Liga. So they expect them to do really well. They retained the likes of Gezal, that's a Leicester City player. Batshuayi is a Chelsea boy, so the expectations were really high, but it just never happened. You can say it's a bit of a mismanagement. The previous head coach, Sergen Yalçın, a club legend, was really struggling to decide if he wanted to go on with the team. He kind of kept the board waiting until the last week to decide. So it might have been a little bit negative. It might have negatively impacted the team in a certain way, but it has been wrong on certain places. The moment that they started to lose in the Champions League, you just saw the morale go down and down and down, and I think that they never recovered. If you look at Fenerbahce, even though they are top four at the moment, they have been pretty bad over the last 7 years. Ali Koç, part of one of the richer families in Turkey, has taken over his boyhood club, but it has never worked out. He has changed a lot of managers in his time. He started with the likes of Philip Cocu. It didn't work out. Then he went to the old faithful in Ersun Yanal, and he just kept throwing money at the problem, but it money isn't everything when it comes to football if you don't really have a plan. He started out with a plan, but the moment it started to go bad, he tried to force money into the team to help fix it. Fener is also a team that has it has great players. They tried to get some youngsters in the team in the likes of Burak Kapacak, that just didn't get any minutes because certain players, the previous head coach Vitor Pereira, a lot of people thought that his decisions were made by Ali Koç, that he was influencing the team selection. You got players like Özil who you can't bench because he's a big name, and they made a big deal out of signing him. They have a lot of midfielders. It's just a team that is, on paper, it's really stacked, but the football isn't played on paper. You have to go out on the pitch and try to figure out something, but it just doesn't work. And I think currently the Fener the Fener situation is probably the most ready to explode one, because the teams have been desperate for success for a long amount of time at this moment, and I don't really see a way out. If you look at Galatasaray has there's a saying that the Turkish people on Twitter say, is that we all know who the Turkish presidents are for each team, but I couldn't tell you the president of one of the big teams in Europe. And I think that's one of the issues in Turkey, is that some presidents take over the team and they try to impose their will, and they try to really advertise themselves. The current president, Burak Elmaz, his campaign tour, so to say, was all based around, if I get chosen, I'm going to retain Fatih Terim, who almost won them the league last year. I personally didn't think that was the right decision, because every time that Terim comes back to Galatasaray, there's like a time limit where he is really good, but the longer it goes on, he just keeps getting worse. A little bit kind of like Jose Mourinho, where he's good like the first couple of seasons, and then it tapers down, and he really starts to fall in his quality. paid a lot of money for those players that I talked about just a couple minutes ago. They brought in Victor Nelson for 7 million. It's really a lot of money for Turkish standards. The two Romanian players, the Kaldao and Morotan, 6.5, 4 million. They really tried to revitalize the team by getting young players in. Having a certain view that if they can get these players and hope that they exceed their performance, that they might be able to sell them and recoup their costs and make some money too. But with the standings in the league, they haven't been doing really good in the league. The only saving grace has been their Europa League campaign, but a lot of fans were divided. Fatih Terim on his own has a really huge fan base. At point, it really started to feel like it was Fatih Terim against Galatasaray, which is really odd because he's getting paid by the club. He's an employee. He was an employee of the club. So when they fired him because of obviously the standings in the league, the fan base was really just divided, which it still is. A lot of people don't want Dominic Tarrant, a manager that has been the assistant manager for Guardiola for years, has won cups with him. They don't really want him to do well because they are Terim fans and Galatasaray fans. That first they are Terim fans and then they are Galatasaray fans. So there's a lot of fighting between the fans of the club. But I think that Galatasaray, historically the most successful team in the league by far. Fatih Terim is the most successful head coach in the league. Galatasaray will bounce back. Whatever it is, they will find a way. They always do find a way to bounce back, and it might be it might be a difficult season this year, but the nice part for the neutral fan of the Super League is that teams really bounce back really quick, especially the big four teams really bounce back really quick because they have the financial aims to do it. So I think that out of all the Istanbul teams, I think that Fener might be the worst. They are in the worst situation. So if they come back, it will be the biggest comeback story of the year, definitely, because their fans have been really waiting for the trophies. But I think that Beşiktaş and Galatasaray are in much better situations to revitalize the team and get back to their usual standings.
Yeah, it's truly been a season unlike any I can remember in Turkish football this campaign. But hey, I'm not complaining as someone who always likes to see the underdog triumph. I'm absolutely not complaining at all, or push the big boys in the country's league. Some excellent insight there from Jakup. So on to Gala now then. It's fair to say that they go into this tie against Barca as firm underdogs, given their current situation domestically and Barca's recent revival under a new manager themselves in Xavi Hernandez. Obviously, Dominic Torrent has recently replaced Terim as Gala manager. However, where do you think Gala's strengths are? Despite them being underdogs here, where are their strong points which could help them cause a huge upset against Barca in this Europa League round of 16 clash?
I think currently the biggest strength they have, as I said, the individual qualities are there. It in the team, it is, in my opinion, it never was an issue of the quality not being there. I think everything surrounding the pitch was just a little bit too horrible at the moment. But I think that they have shown in Europe to be a decent team because their players get those spaces, get those freedom to express themselves and show their qualities. But what also helps is that before, whenever they faced their European counterparts, they used to think that they are not that good, so that they could easily beat them. So they might have thought of themselves as better than a Marseille, than a Lazio Roma or Lokomotiv Moscow. But when you face a team like Barcelona, one of the biggest, depending on who you ask, maybe the biggest team in the world, you are definitely an underdog. So if they embrace that feeling, if they embrace the feeling of being an underdog, and that takes a certain pressure off the team, I think that will that will help the players mentally to be more calm for the game, to not be stressed when a certain pass goes wrong, or a certain cross goes wrong, or a shot goes wrong. I think mentally they will be much more prepared. Because of the big names that are involved at Barcelona's side, and the big venue. So I think that Torrent, he has been, as I said, he has been with Guardiola for years. He has been in those situations where the pressure has been on him. I think that he should have the keys he should have the keys to bring the guys home. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. I'm not going to predict a Galatasaray win in either game, but I think that if they show that they are capable of going back, keeping fighting, going for those battles, going for those tackles, not backing down, the individual qualities are there. Upsets, bigger upsets have happened in Europe in recent years. Why not this time? Why be Turkish fans tend to be pessimistic when it comes to fixtures like this, but the league has been played, knock on wood. So why not go for Europe and hope to have a repeat of the 2000 UEFA Cup winners? So fingers crossed. I really hope for Galatasaray fans and for the country itself. As Turks, we do need some positive things every now and then. I really hope that they show Barcelona that Turkish teams are still some to be afraid of. A lot of players, Muslera was injured. He seems to be back, and that's going to be really helpful for the team. Bafetimi Gomis, huge fan, huge amount of fans in Turkey. His last season with Galatasaray, he was the top goal scorer. We're just going to pray, fingers crossed that they do well, and I do think that they will at least have a draw somewhere. But I believe, I might be a little bit optimistic because Trabzonspor is doing really well this year, but I believe in a good performance by the Galatasaray boys.
Excellent stuff. And finally, Jakup, one last quick thing to ask. Could you give us a prediction for the tie? You can give either an aggregate score over the two legs, or just which of the two sides you think will progress, or if you're feeling really bold, give both.
I'm not one of the predicting kind, because I always think that I'm going to curse the game. What I really hope, I really hope that Halil Dervişoğlu scores. I don't see him. He probably won't get any minutes, but he's a boy. I'm from Rotterdam. He played for Excelsior. He played for Sparta, which is really close to me, and he's from the same city that I'm from in Turkey. He's from Trabzon. So I really hope that he might get on the score sheet. Kerem Aktürkoğlu, such a great player to watch as a neutral, such a great player to watch in general. I really hope he gets an assist. He shows some promise, some great dribbling, maybe some assists, so that he can show himself in the European campaign and maybe get a move abroad and make us proud. The first game is away, so I think it's going to be a Barcelona win. I want to say a 2-1 win. I think that Gomis might score one, and I have a feeling that the game in Turkey might be a draw. But now with new rules, with the away game rule that has been scrapped, a draw, a 1-1 draw will have the game go to overtime. I'm going to be optimistic. Galatasaray is going through. Galatasaray is going through. If you speak it into existence, it happens. So let's hope it works that way.
Excellent stuff. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jakup. Thank you also to Matt Clark. And that is your preview, folks, for Barcelona versus Galatasaray in the Europa League round of 16.